sheet, or?
I can, Mr. Chair, if you'd like. If you folks did not pick them up on the way in, there is a warrant, special town meeting warrant, along with some attachments that will go to it. The proposed amendments that are reflected within the warrant articles, 2 through 5, and then there is a deed that's been prepared, and if approved, would be transferred to us. That would be highlighted in Article 6, and then finally in Article 7, there is a local ordinance to enact a recall ordinance. So if you want, I can. We do have the planning board chair, Terry Ashford, here to address issues as you go through the zoning pieces. And if you'd like, I can read each one of these, and if the public so desire, we will entertain discussions on them, and hopefully we can answer their questions. Again, they will then vote on this by secret ballot when the elections are held on November 8th, and I believe our polls, as outlined in the warrant, are open from 6 o'clock in the morning to 8 p.m. So, whatever your pleasure is, Mr. Chairman. I will start with the first parts of the warrant. Obviously talks about posting it, when the articles will be acted upon, the election of the moderator under Article 1. Article 2 starts the discussion. To vote on the following referendum question, an ordinance to amend the Berwick Land Use Ordinance under Section 2.2 regulations with regard to outdoor storage, copies of which is attached to this warrant. Under the attachment, Article 2, 2.2, in the land use ordinance on page 17, there will be a change, and the change will be adding that definition for outdoor storage as underlined. Storage of materials on a lot without benefit of a structure with 4 walls and a roof to protect said material from the elements for commercial, light industry, and non-residential purposes only. Are there any questions?
Gary, anytime you'd like to speak, just let me know. Any questions from the public?
Yeah, why is this on here? Who asked for it? Stone.
The planning board asking for it.
Based on what?
Based on residents' complaints on neighboring businesses that have a bunch of uncovered stuff just all randomly around their facilities. It's for commercial, not for residential.
I know, but explain to me what this means. Does this mean that they can store stuff outside?
With the
without
benefit of a structure.
Hmm?
They can do it with the benefit of a structure, 4 walls and a roof. Instead of randomly
It says
having
without
stuff
benefit of a
outside.
structure.
Without benefit of a structure for 4 walls and a roof to protect said material from the elements for commercial, light industry, and non-residential purposes only. Storage of material on a lot with benefit. I think it's supposed to be with.
Really?
Yeah.
What's that?
I think it's supposed to be with.
Well, that's the way it is right now.
That's not good.
With the benefit of a structure with 4 walls and a roof. That's supposed to be with. It is.
Ding, 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 ding.
No, it is. That's what we discussed, was what was already permitted for commercial. It's supposed to be for the benefit of the residences that are bordering a commercial property that want to have outdoor storage and already do and aren't moving them. So that's really the 4 walls and a roof, is to protect the site from the residences having to do that.
How would that affect the iron place down there? Do they have to throw outside?
How is it going to affect them? But they have fenced in property and whatnot. I mean, that is, and the definition for that junkyard, so to speak, has that written in there that it has outdoor. This is for the light industry and the non-residential commercial properties that border a residence directly. So, and really, that's a typo, it's supposed to be with, for sure. Because outdoor storage, we don't want just randomly businesses hiring stuff outside, so really that is a typo, nice job.
Okay, well, how do they fix that now?
I don't know, we're gonna have to take it back now you have to not vote for it, because if you do, we'll have random outdoor storage everywhere. Yeah, and that's really what's happening already,
Well,
which is what
no,
we're trying to stop.
no, the article is written right, isn't it?
No,
It says without, and it should say with the benefit of.
That's the definition, oh, that's the definition.
Right, the attachment applies to the Article 2.
Yeah.
What you're passing will be that definition.
Right, it's supposed to
The
have, that's
definition's in
supposed to be
error.
the change, right?
So at this particular juncture, I think we want people to vote that down because the language that was presented as part of this package isn't what the language of the planning board wishes. Okay, Article 4.
Excuse me.
how about Article,
You have another,
Yes,
how about Article
you have
3?
another question on that.
Yes.
George Murphy, 27 Tower Lane.
Come up, please,
Material,
we can't hear you.
I'm sorry, what?
Can you come up, please, to the podium? We can't
You want me to
hear
come up to the podium?
you. We can't hear you.
Okay.
Oscar was close enough.
You were supposed to, but you didn't correct him. You didn't correct me.
No, you were right there.
Okay.
You were way back, I couldn't hear you.
All right, I'll speak loudly then, as best I can with a
Sounds
sore
like you
throat.
got cold.
I do. Materials, the definition of materials, it seems rather vague. Are we talking like crushed stones, brick?
Right, and materials is already
Or-
defined in the ordinance as it is.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, for the sake of my knowledge, what's the definition of material?
Okay, I don't have the land use ordinance in front of me to say it, I just know that there is a definition, and it would be a quarry type thing of outdoor stone and things like that, but not the outdoor storage.
Okay.
Outdoor storage is, anything like maybe an industry might have outside, like scrap pieces of trailer or garbage all out there.
Okay.
It's really targeted to the downtown area to help maintain things that are stored just randomly outside. And basically, all that it really is the definition of outdoor storage. It doesn't say that it would change where it's allowed or anything like that. It's
Okay.
just more defining outdoor storage. And material is also under definition.
Thank you.
So, Gary, are you saying stone and different types of?
Outdoor porous material that
That
don't
would be
affect
allowed
any-
outside, wouldn't it? Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Those definitions are already in the land use ordinance, and if we don't have the ordinance in front of us, we can't provide you accurate information as to what that definition actually says, but we're not, this evening, we're not looking to change that definition, I believe, in your action on the 8th.
We can't change anything tonight.
No. Article 3, to vote on the following referendum question, an ordinance to amend the Berwick land use ordinance to change section 4.1 classes of districts by adding urban overlay district to this section, a copy which is attached to this warrant. So it would be the next one down, would appear in the land use ordinance under page 26, and it just indicates overlay districts will also include now item 2, which would be the urban overlay district.
Which was already in there before and was omitted, and so for the sake of all of the verbiage in the land use ordinance, for that district to be added back in, because it is in there sporadically, throughout the ordinance, land use ordinance.
Yes.
I'm confused, you
Name,
read
please. Name, please.
David Rodriguez, 12 Wilson Street. You read,
Come to the podium.
oh, sure. From the warrant, you read Article 3, from proposed amendments, it appears to me to be labeled Article 4. Am I confused? Am I missing something?
It isn't.
Not really. The Article 4, subsection 4.1 refers to the land use ordinance. If you had the land use ordinance in your hand tonight,
Yeah,
you would find all that information on Article 4.
Article 4 of the
Yes,
land,
sir.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Stone, can't get up this time.
No problem.
Is there a copy of that ordinance in the building that we could look at?
Sure.
Well, wouldn't that be prudent to look at it, have it here, so we can say, rather than guess what's in it or not in it?
For what, Article 4?
All of them.
No, the
Well,
ordinance.
Article
He wants
2.
to
If
know
you've
how
got a
big the
subdivision
ordinance-
regulation, why can't we have a copy of it here so that somebody can look at it if they have a question?
I don't have my ordinance on
I don't, there must be one in the town hall.
Absolutely.
Can we take a 5-second break and get it?
I think
Whatever your pleasure is.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. There's probably one in Jim's office anyway.
Would you like me to find one?
While he's doing that, Harry, what is the urban overlay district? What does that consist of?
And the urban overlay is mostly the downtown area.
How far is it?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, it goes up to almost to the D where Pine Hill comes up, you know exactly where it is.
No, but how about we wait till we get the ordinance to look at it, we don't wanna guess.
Well, I was just.
Yeah,
I know, but
I-
we're gonna guess and it's gonna be wrong.
Okay. Yeah. We've gone over it. I almost wanna say
Well, I probably got to say
I wish I was.
Huh?
I don't know if that's even good, I don't see that.
Okay, so you wanna look at 2.2?
Yeah, can we look at that really definition about the storage?
Outdoor storage.
No. You're wearing, what's that? What are you going down for this weekend?
I just wanted to know the fall.
That's horrible. Is there arguing? Oh, I'm sorry. That's horrible. That was the worst part of my life, going through that with both my parents. Even my sister. Well, not the last time ever.
Quite a while.
Oh, she must feel kind of bad. Is she really excited about it? Different sort of place, I don't think I could live there. I couldn't live there. Not bad to down, but I couldn't.
Is this ordinance up to date? Just to give a definition of outdoor storage.
No, it wouldn't have a definition of storage because I think a definition is gonna be added, correct?
No, because there always was one that said,
We put one in years ago.
right,
Remember they were putting trailer truck boxes here and there and using it for storage? They did something that year to eliminate that problem.
right, maybe
And
they
that
took
was
it out.
years ago.
All right, it's in the land use table, for storage, it's got to be, because it's somewhere in there, I don't know.
We're not gonna be voting on it anyway.
Huh?
We're not gonna be
No,
voting
you can like, take it
I
so
don't
many
know.
different places.
Can't take it off.
No,
Take it off now?
has nothing. The definitions are all in the front, outdoor storage is not listed there. Okay, so maybe we're going to add it, that's what it is, add it, and then with its benefit of structure. So either way, it's worded wrong, and it can't even go before you, because for one, we can't find it in there. So it either has to be added and changed, the wording.
Did you see the date? Did you see the date?
They're short.
No, but it's fresh interest, I'm sure it's not the same one.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. It's the book that's supplied to the public as they come in to review, so I'm sure it's up to date.
So outdoor storage would have to be added then. It's mentioned somewhere in a chart, in one of the, land use tables as far as outdoor storage goes, because we were looking at it, I know it is in there. But, okay, so the definition needs to be added in because it is listed in land use under the tables, but it needs to have with benefit of structure. So either way, it's worded wrong, and it can't be, I mean, you guys can vote on it, obviously, it's submitted to you. But it's not the planning board's intention to have it without benefit of infrastructure.
We've moved on from Article 2, unless you want to talk about that again. We're on to Article 3 at this point. And that was
Article
when-
4, 4.1,
That was when the
classes and
residents,
districts.
right.
What does the urban overlay district do? What does it
It's
do?
another class and another district, like the
I know,
AP,
but
the
it does
shoreland,
it-
SCI, CI.
Does it reduce the setbacks? Does it reduce the density? Or what does it do?
Well, it's sporadically mentioned in our land use tables and throughout the land use ordinance, as it was in there. And basically, the area of the urban overlay district was the downtown area. It's mentioned throughout, and it was omitted for some reason years ago. And we're just asking to have it put back in as a
I know,
class
but you've got
district.
2 more articles beyond that to talk about urban overlay district.
Right,
I'm
so
simply
that's,
asking,
those are the only
what
changes.
does it do?
What does it do?
Yeah, what does it
It
do?
provides a different district in the town of Berwick.
I know, but in that new district it provides, does it provide for a reduction in the amount of setbacks? Does it
No,
provide
right now,
different?
urban
is it-
overlay follows setbacks of the R1 and the CI.
Then what would be the purpose of putting it in there then?
Because the urban overlay district is basically downtown where everything's very much grandfathered over and can't even adhere to the R1 numbers right now.
No, that can't work that way.
Okay, because it is in here, it is mostly, it's already mentioned, the urban overlay, various times throughout the land use ordinance.
I understand that.
Okay, so with that, you take the current things that you can look up in there if you would like, to see what the land use ordinance covers for urban overlay. It's mostly about commercial, industrial, and mixed with residential, known as a mixed use. Which, yes, further down, you'll see a mixed use article as well, proposal by the planning board. So yes, I mean setbacks and whatnot, you know, I'm not gonna quote all the setbacks, they're in there, that's public knowledge for everyone to have, voted in by the voters. But all the setbacks and everything stay the same, they're not, nothing is changing, all we're asking for is that the urban overlay district be added back in as a class, because it's already mentioned various times.
I have a question on that.
I understand Oscar's question, and I think a lot of people, when they go to vote, are gonna ask it, and so to enable us to talk about it or answer questions, what does it mean? How do I define an urban overlay district? What is it?
The urban overlay district is basically the downtown area. There's a map in there that even lists it as the urban overlay district.
Well, I understand that, but I mean, it also has a zoning.
Right, and zoning right now is the same as R1.
So why, to Oscar's point, why isn't R1 good enough? Why do we have to have the additional?
So then we have to go through and instead of just changing that and adding it as a class, because it's already mentioned and defined in the land use in various places, that if we define that, it makes it a lot easier with the setbacks and everything, or we would have to go through each thing that it lists, that is mentioned in, like the table for one, and every item listed on the land use table would have to go back as a vote to be able to omit the wording of urban overlay district on there. So it saves the voters probably 200 articles.
So it is
So they have to
vote,
vote
it
on
it is defined in there somewhere already?
It is defined, it used to be a class, it's labeled as, where things are allowed in the urban overlay district. And
There's no
things like that,
definition of
so,
urban overlay district. It says, 5.3, it says mixed use.
5.3, yeah.
That
But we're
says
talking about
mixed
class of
use.
districts right now.
Okay?
So 4.1. Yes.
Years ago, and it had to be in that district, they were requiring any new use in a building or a new building going up had to be commercial on the first floor, could be residential above.
Right.
Is that still in there?
Well, that's why
And it's
mixed use,
basically this
it is still in
district.
there, and that's why the next thing comes up with the article, the next article that we have for mixed use.
What does the overlay district consist of, size?
Well, you have to look at the map. I don't know where the northern boundary is, but I know it comes all the way downtown, and I know it goes as far as the church up on the hill. And probably, SCI covers Bridge Street and all that down there. So it basically goes up Rochester Street.
And is the R1?
Or it's listed as an urban overlay district, and it is in the R1 and CI zone.
I can remember.
R1 maybe,
And then a number of years ago, it came down Maple Lodge Street, but I'm not sure whether that.
yeah, I don't know about the northern end of this, where that's why we wanted to.
There must be maps in this book.
Is that, Ellen, isn't it a term
I
that's,
have another question, Barry. Go ahead.
is it, I'm sorry, isn't it a term relative to the comprehensive plan? When that was done,
That was done, yeah.
weren't we talking about where we had to concentrate businesses, and if we went outside the urban overlay, isn't that terminology that comes from the comprehensive plan?
Well, I think probably it does. I remember now, the
Pretty sure it was
comprehensive plan
mentioned in
was
there.
quite,
It's mentioned in quite a few documents that go down there, especially sporadically throughout the land use.
All set?
I don't know the answer. I still don't understand what that means. I can always vote no.
Isn't it shown in the map? And there must be a map in the book, Oscar.
I can see that, yeah.
We also with Article 3, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Article 4, vote on the following referendum question. An ordinance to amend the Berg land use ordinance to change section 5.3 mixed use discussing the overlay district, a copy of which is attached to this warrant. So Article 4 refers to mixed use on your attachment. It would be Article 5.3 mixed use, where you can see the underlying section where they've added except when in urban overlay district under the mixed use criteria.
Okay, I still have the same question. What does that mean? When you're accepting something out, what are we accepting out? You've got mixed use, I can read the definition right in there. Okay, but what are we accepting out? Does that mean we're reducing, I asked earlier, setbacks? Does it mean reducing density?
It's the square footage for the lot.
Okay, that's density, so we're trying to sneak something in the back door to reduce the density.
I'm not sneaking anything in the back door, it's not density, it's the minimum lot size for the lot that has to be right now. Right now, it has to be 10,000 square feet for residential or any commercial. But if it's commercial mixed with residential or just commercial, then it can meet the lot size. It has to be the 10,000 square feet for the residential if they're gonna have one in there, and half of that lot size for any commercial.
You've already got
property.
that in the book.
It's not half the lot size right now.
Sure it is.
Right now, it is just
I get
mixed
that.
use to be allowed in the urban overlay district.
Well,
so this
It's
is,
10,000 square feet for every single use on there, residential or commercial.
no.
That's, yes, we've been through this.
Let's go through it one more time, because I
Yeah,
don't
let's.
understand. Let me read what it says here. Mixed use means the development of a lot, building, structure, or portion thereof, which combines a residential and non-residential use. Mixed uses are allowed only under the following conditions. Each unit must comply with all performance standards in this ordinance applicable to that use. Okay, so if it's an R1, that's 10,000 square feet. Where different dimensional requirements apply to different uses, the most restrictive requirement shall apply to the entire mixed use.
Which
Okay,
is residential.
that's correct. If
And
any
what we're
use-
saying is,
No,
wait,
Let me finish, you've got 3 more parts to that, please. It says, if any of the uses requires conditional use, which that happens, the planning board shall consider the impacts and effects of the entire mixed use when the board applies the conditional use approval criteria, and when the board determines what limited conditions, if any, are required. Where there is any different conflict or inconsistency between any of the standards of this ordinance as applied to different uses, the most restrictive standard shall govern the entire mixed use.
Correct.
And last but not least, a mixed use shall meet minimum lot size for residential use plus half the minimum lot size for each additional commercial industrial use. You already have it in here, why are we gonna put it back in here?
Because it's not except when in the urban overlay district. In other words, we want it more.
No, when you say accepting, that means the overlay urban district is gonna allow me to do something that I'm not allowed to do right now.
Except when in the urban overlay districts means that it can have less square footage to have more businesses.
That's not,
They can apply for that, that's what it means. when
it
you
does
put
not
accept.
mean that, dear.
What does it mean to you then?
This means that you're
I'm
going,
talking about this, what does this proposal mean to you?
you wrote it, I don't know, that's why I'm asking
I'm
what it
trying
means.
to tell you what it means, and you're not accepting what it
I'm
means.
not accepting, because I understand words differently than you do. When you say you're accepting something, it means you're accepting it out, that means an exception. Right now, your ordinance says you need 10,000 square feet in the R1 zone, and if you have a commercial use with that, residential, you need 5,000 additional square feet for that. Okay. What more needs to be said?
Except
Now you
for in
wanna-
the urban
now you
overlay
wanna
district,
put-
because now we can get it more condensed, that's why.
So now, like I said, you're trying to sneak in the back door so you can reduce the density of the lot.
I'm seriously not trying to sneak anything in the back door, I am
Why do you
presenting
need,
this to the public and you're asking questions, I don't see any sneaking going around at all.
there's no one in this room that can answer that question, and you can't answer that question. What does
Did I
the
not
exception
answer that
stand
question?
for?
All right, I just, I didn't know if I was just talking to the wall, I think I'm answering that
These ordinance
question.
changes were done with the appropriate.
And the CEO is there and everybody else is there, you know, our
Jim,
board
it's not a
here.
question of whether it's done with the board's approval. The town's not gonna understand that. Do you understand what that means when they say you've already got those things allowed in the mixed use? Why do you need to add overlay district? Because that says, that says you can do that unless. So tell me why we're adding that on. That's like buttering both sides of your bread.
We're adding it on to be less restrictive in the urban overlay district.
So you
What's
can
that?
put smaller, you can use smaller commercial use, you can put small residential. You're right.
That is defeating the purpose of the ordinance we have.
Yeah, you're right.
10,000 square
You're
foot
allowing,
minimum.
what you're doing is
Now you wanna
allowing more.
reduce it, and you're
Right.
sneaking in the back door. Say what you
Well, I
wanna
don't wanna
do.
say about sneaking.
Well, I'm gonna
but
say that.
No, I
That's
know,
my
but
words.
basically they are allowing,
Damn it, ask people and tell them what you wanna do. You wanna reduce the density factor so you can do more.
They're putting up a vote, how is that sneaking anything?
Because it's not explained, and there's no one in this room that's understanding it. So when people go to vote, then you're gonna say, well, people voted for it. How the hell do they vote when they don't know what it means?
Understand.
yeah, but the point is, I didn't understand until Oscar and the young lady here was conversing back and forth. Now I do understand what that means, but the general public, when they go in to vote, absolutely is not gonna
Okay.
understand what they're voting for.
Thank you for that. We'll be in town all week. I'm playing good cop, she's playing bad cop. Next time, she gets the time
No.
together. Thank you, and thank you.
Okay.
But you're asking for something that's wrong.
Well, the explanation,
I get the explanation, and so many times I've wanted to have them pasted up in the voting booths, but I've been told that we can't do it. And we can have tables out front for them to look at, And I would love to put all of this in layman's terms, so everyone knew exactly what was going on. I would love to.
Why can't
But
you?
verbiage, and this is the way it has to be written, and
Why?
we have to keep it as general as possible to make sure that we don't, snafu ourselves anywhere else. If somebody else comes along and, make as many of the businesses that are already down there somewhat into the ordinance itself, the
What-
land use table itself.
Why
Because so
couldn't,
many are already grandfathered down here, it makes it hard, it's a challenge.
but if the goal is,
Excuse me, I have a question already, you can time.
I like this exchange, so I'll yield my time and.
Okay.
if the goal is to have educated voters, because I'll tell you, over the past year, I've heard one more time than I can stand, you voted for it.
Hey, can you come and fully?
Yep.
I'm
If-
not saying you.
If the goal is, not many people say that to me, if the goal is to have people understand what they're voting for, so that we don't, a year from now, have people saying, how'd that happen? And somebody's sitting at the table saying, you all voted for it, or most people did, and I'm hearing people saying all day long, I didn't understand what I voted for, but people are still saying, oh, yes, you did. If the goal is to get there, why can't one of these say, just as Sandra said, the effect of this is to reduce
Right,
the
and that would be
density.
on an explanation letter that we would like to have out, and we've asked.
Well, I think that needs to happen, or this shouldn't be there,
I would
because
love
nobody
layman's
has any
terms, like
idea.
I just stated before, I
I
would
mean,
love
I-
to have layman's terms
I
for
think
anybody that comes up to vote, anyone.
I consider myself pretty well informed on this type of issue. I think no one's better informed than Oscar. If Oscar doesn't get it,
She is.
nobody's gonna get it. Well, I mean, obviously Carrie is, and she knows when you go in there, you know exactly what you're voting for. But if Oscar doesn't understand it, I don't understand it, nobody's gonna understand it, so what are you gonna get when you gotta vote for this?
You probably verbatim to what I said at the last meeting that we had trying to put this together. Probably verbatim.
That's, then I would ask the board not vote for that. If Carrie says she didn't want it on there, then it shouldn't be on there.
Oh, no, I didn't say I didn't want it on there, it had to be written like this.
Well, it's not though.
For us to get it
It's
on.
not written the way you want it, it shouldn't be on
You
there.
plan on
Thank you.
doing explanations of these?
Yes.
And very clear so that
Correct.
people will.
Oh, they can't be in the booths when people are voting, which is, you get more than one, and, I don't know.
They can't be in the booth?
Not
in the booth,
No.
they can be outside and people can pick them up and look at them, pick them up, take one with them. We always, provide that stuff out.
Yeah, I realize.
And that's not the
But-
first time
but
that
in the
would be
booth,
out
you
there.
do the budget and everything.
But the explanations and whatnot from the planning board for the last couple of votes that I was privy to putting stuff forward to you guys, they had explanation letters out there, and all of them were still out there. I mean, a majority, not very many people know that they're out there, for one. They come in and they're usually outside where you even walk in to vote, so.
Are you gonna have a map showing where the urban overlay is going to lie within the downtown?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, that's important,
I'll tell John to get that.
because it doesn't cover the whole area.
No,
No.
and I don't wanna quote, because I don't wanna be.
It's just a portion from the shoreline in, covering where you've already got a lot of small businesses,
Right,
small lots.
it was more to bring everybody,
Yeah.
into functionality.
I'm gonna take this gentleman, he wanted to talk earlier.
David Rodriguez from 12 Wilson Street. I guess what I would ask as a question to make sure I understand this properly, there was just a lot of discussion as to whether or not the Sullivan School property had enough land to build the number of units that they're constructing. If these two were to pass, and if that property was in the urban overlay district, do I understand this to say there would be no density requirement for that project? Is that in effect
Well,
what the passage
it would
of
be
these
any
amendments would,
any new project that came along would have to adhere to this.
right,
No,
and in
they-
effect, any
They've already
new,
been approved, so that's,
so any
It is
new
what it is.
project would not
Would have to
need to
adhere.
have that density that they had for that project. That is
it
within
would be
the
a lower
urban
density.
overlay.
It would be a lowered square footage, yes.
It would be a lower square footage, and would that
It
square
would be
footage
15,000 as opposed to 20,000.
15,000 for as many units as I wanna build?
No, it's 15,000, 10,000 per residential unit and 5,000 for a commercial business that wanted to go on there.
but this says, those are the current rules in
Right, but
the
you always
land
have to
use
differ, no, you
ordinance.
have to differ right now to the, more stringent ones, so if you have a residential in there, then everything has to have residential, rules with it. Right now, we're saying, except for when in the overlay district, so that if a business came in and put an apartment above, that they would not have to have 20,000 square feet, they then have to have the 15.5. In other words, the residential would leave the majority, they'd be saving 5,000 square feet.
No matter how many units, you
Per,
only
you,
save
per
5,000
business, per
feet
use,
per
per
business.
use. So if 3 businesses went in and 1 residential, it'd be the 25,000 square feet.
Okay, and I would question how this is written, because to me, when it says except when in the urban overlay district, that exception means all density requirements are off within the urban overlay district. It's accepting that whole minimum lot size. That's the way I read that, and I would further point out, again, I'm attending here tonight, so I learned, but if I was in the voting booth first time, and I read these warrants and the articles, and I read these definitions or descriptions, I understand now that these article descriptions here refer to the land use book. Is that correct? I would have no clue what I was voting on, because the articles, first they match and then they're one off.
Okay, go ahead, Marcia.
Oh. If the first use is residential,
Right.
that's 10,000 square feet. Now, the
So it's
second
the more
use,
stringent of the two, so it
the
has to
second
be.
use is not commercial, it's another residential.
So then it would have to have 10 to 20,000.
Right,
square
so if there's 20 units going in, they need
feet. They need their square
20,
footage.
200,000 square feet? They need 10,000 per unit.
Correct.
So it wouldn't affect that apartment complex
No, so it's all
whatsoever.
residential, there's no
It's
business.
only if it's the secondary use is commercial.
But if the police department or
Police
something wanted to put
department.
something on, then it would be commercial.
It's commercial now.
Police department?
Okay.
No, that was my question, or my statement, that it won't affect multiple residential units. Only a residential and then commercial.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. There's nothing to preclude them to come back and amend their plan before the planning board, is there?
No.
Okay, so then, if it was adopted, then Sullivan Street Enterprise, whatever it is, could come back, amend their plan, and say, well, we don't need all that excess space, we only want this amount. What would preclude them from doing that?
Nothing.
Okay, so then that, sneaking in the back door. All right, that's my words, I like those words.
I like,
Okay,
no, see
I
that.
haven't, can I,
I've
I
never
wanna
been a
suggest
sneak, I've
something.
always been an upfront person, so.
I'm
What?
sorry,
Take it on
Ken
the-
said
Like
this
this.
affects only commercial secondary uses, not multiple
Correct.
residential. Okay,
That does, it's not, yeah, that much, but anyway, I have a recommendation for the information you wanna give them as far as, about this, your ordinance, and that will be vote no on 3, 4, and 5. Thank you.
Thank you very much, publicly.
Anyone else?
So someone asked me, I won't be able to.
Okay.
Would this affect the old high school?
Yes,
Yes.
Eric,
Oscar,
it affects the whole town, I'm sorry.
It affects anything in the urban overlay
what
district,
is that in
and that is
the
in the urban
Stop.
overlay district.
but it's all residential.
It's not residential,
That particular
actually. You got a
building
police
is,
station
but
there.
the whole lot itself doesn't have to be.
I'm sorry.
The whole lot is one lot, the police department happens to be on that lot.
No.
but it will not reduce the density of what they need for those.
For the residential units, they have to have 10,000 square feet per
Per
unit.
unit.
And so that, this
No.
would not change that
Correct.
at all. So they cannot come back and make any changes.
They can for the whole entire lot. The land, the leased land that they're saying is leased underneath them can't change at all, no.
It isn't gonna make any difference as far as that's concerned.
Right.
The south in the residential units, absolutely not.
Yes, get in the back.
Okay, I need to clarify this, because it seems to me that everybody in this room is confused. So if they come back after this is changed, doesn't it then take away the calculation made on the police department and allow them to have more units?
And allow the building to have more units? I don't know. I don't think so.
So you don't know the answer to your question, and you don't know the answer to your
I
question.
don't think so. I don't
So
know.
there might be.
They would have to come back with a full-blown out conditional use,
But why wouldn't they? They make money off of it.
what?
Why wouldn't they? If you can make a bunch of money off of it, why wouldn't they?
I don't know, you'd have to adhere to the rest of all the other stuff.
I think some of our concerns, and
Setbacks and
forgive us for
everything
being
else are-
cynical, are that that's exactly what's going on. So
I haven't heard
that's
anything
the
like
question we're trying to really identify here in order
that.
to.
We haven't heard from anybody about that. These are just things that housekeeping stuff that we were working on. Absolutely. This has nothing to do with,
But the bottom line of the answer to that question is.
this really is
maybe.
like trying to set up for, future anything around here, you know? It didn't have to do with the old school building when we did that.
But the answer to the question.
They
is
can
no.
come back, anybody can come back and try to amend their conditional use that they already have.
Certainly.
Anybody.
Yeah, I've done a bunch, but
So I can't answer
relative
no
to
to
that particular article, I mean, we ought to be able,
It doesn't have it with them in mind, no,
But-
that's what you're saying.
but in the answer to Eleanor's question is not a definite no. It might allow them to put more units in. It would, is the way I.
Anybody
Could
could
they?
try to
There's
come in
only
and.
enough land to support the 34 units.
Not if you change
No,
what's
that's what
attributed
it
to the police department.
Not if you
because
change the
that's
density.
Involved in the
They only
calculation.
have a very small part of that, and it's not counted into what goes with those units.
But anybody,
Somebody else take over.
but anybody could come and do that, not just them, and try to.
Oh, I'm
amend it.
certainly anybody could, but right now, just as a
Oscar.
good explanation,
So
or
yes,
example.
they could come and they could make
No,
a
we're not gonna have
conditional
meetings back
use
and forth
amendment,
stuff.
they could
Right,
try.
just one thing I wanna say, I think it was 2 years ago, there was a question put before the town to be voted on, whether to change the density up there where that project is, and it was voted down. So if no one's come before the planning board, why is the planning board dreaming up this stuff? Why aren't they looking to say, we need to control things? That's what I've heard from the planning board, they wanna control the subdivisions, they wanna control all the buildings, and hell, now you're saying, let's open the town up. Where did the planning board get that? If there
Trying to
isn't
open
been,
it up for business, yeah.
what's that?
I'm trying to open it up for business, sure.
Business is, how much of business?
No, that's why I have this specific mixed use didn't have anything to do with the fact of the Bateman building or
I
any of
understand that, but they would be able to use it once it is on the books.
Anybody can,
And
not
you keep
just
saying
them.
that Eleanor, they can. They can come in and amend their plan.
But the building that they have, it supports what they have going on.
That's because the ordinance says they have to have that, but as soon as you change the ordinance saying they only have to have half as much, guess what? Now they get twice as much land to use.
For a commercial use. For a commercial use, not residential.
Oh no, they're talking about changing the density requirement.
For additional
For commercial.
commercial uses.
For everything,
First
the
of
way
all-
the article's written, for everything.
But it says commercial industrial.
It's still, same goes
It
saying.
says
Except
commercial
when in the
industrial.
urban overlay,
No,
all
no,
those
no.
requirements go away.
David.
The people that want to talk.
I don't see it like that.
There was, a lady had a hand up there first.
I was just gonna say Bateman proposed 40 units originally. That would, wouldn't that, Marcia, allow them to ask for the 40 units because
No,
they got
because
rejected?
the cut in the density is for only commercial uses, not residential.
It's maxed at residential right now. They got in what they can get in that square footage that they have.
If they wanted to get rid of one apartment, they could probably put in 2 commercial uses. But I doubt they're gonna do that. They cannot put in more residential.
They didn't even save spot for the historical society. They didn't, remember they were gonna have a room for you and everything else, they didn't even do that, so. They maximized their living space for residential units, the space is maxed. I'm so glad that you guys find me like that, it's great. Team members on the planning board too, come on down.
You all set? Yes. Article 5. Vote on the following referendum question. The ordinance to amend the Berwick land use ordinance under section 6.2, land use district regulation table allowing specific businesses along Route 9, copy which is attached to the warrant, as attachment A1. The last page, provides the land use table, and then it notes that notation of 2 being removed. Let me move on.
All this does is, change R3 from 2 to 1. And allow businesses along Route 9.
Just along the line for
Yeah, can do it now.
Article 6, the town vote to accept the dedication of land for highway purposes pursuant to 23 MRSA 3025, made by Heritage Woods LLC and Heritage Woods Realty LLC of a title and fee simple of Dodson Road, so-called, except Dodson Road as a town way. Note, Dodson Road is located on the easterly side of School Street, Route 9, and being more particularly shown on the plan entitled Penny Pond 1, Old Pond Hill Road, and Sullivan Street, dated October 15, 2008. Ownership is being transferred to the town via warranty deed, copy which is attached to the warrant, attachment B. You'll find attachment B starts out with a warranty deed, the appropriate signatures by the owner, and then a description under Exhibit A, description of the parcel that will be provided to us. Article 7, to vote on following referendum questions for the ordinance entitled recall ordinance to the town of Berwick, Maine be enacted, as fully described in attachment C to this warrant. Provide, you see in attachment C, copy of the warrant, and the ordinance as presented.
Questions on this? We do need to let the residents know that the state in emergency session developed a recall ordinance. And it's far more involved and far more stringent than what this one is written. And Keith's looked at it a couple of times. Do you have anything to offer on that, Keith?
I can provide some of the changes. The emergency legislation, I had an opportunity to talk with.
It was emergency through the state.
It was
Yeah.
emergency legislation.
Done during the
study.
summer.
It was done and enacted in June. And it provides a blueprint for municipalities that do not have a local ordinance or a charter that specifically discusses recall ordinances to be able to use the statute in order to review and recall municipal elected officials. The distinction here, and I had a chance to talk with, very quickly, with Representative O'Connor, who was a co-sponsor of this bill, who indicated to me that this bill would only be used in the event that a local ordinance wasn't enacted. So, it's her view that the legislation would only be allowed if our ordinance did not pass, if our local ordinance did not go through. The distinction between what our local ordinance is and what is being laid out in the statute are pretty distinct in that the state law indicates is a notice of intention that has to be filed with the clerk prior to the petition being submitted. The notice provides the ability of the petition, of the clerk, to provide to the petitioner specific language and documents that are related and used and specifically have certain things addressed upon them. Our ordinance, our local ordinance, does not require that as part of its process. The other thing is that the state